Praying Mantis. Praying Mantis.
Digital can handler, cup to the screen. Support the stream, rocks the routine. Years on the clock, skills stuck flat. Every loss blamed on this and that. Say it's lag, say it's hate, say the world ain't fair. But the mirror don't buffer and the truth still stares.
Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome to the DSP Morning Show. Hi, y'all. Today it is Wednesday, the 28th of January, 2026. And, of course, I'm DSP. And this is a very special morning show because today we're going to count down my top 8 games of 2025. Finally. Yeah, I know. We're at the end of January, and I'm finally getting around to doing this. To be quite honest with you, I honestly don't think this is very necessary. I think that if you followed me all year last year, it's very easy to figure out what my favorite games were. But it's just a situation of tradition where I've had people contacting me for the past couple of weeks saying, Phil, what gives? You didn't do a Game of the Year awards this year. And I was like, yeah, but there's really not that much desire for it. You know, we're doing variety content now, playing all kinds of different games, doing podcasting, morning shows. Hell, today we're going to build Legos, right? And it seems like me doing that stuff on stream is just way more important or requested than, say, me going back and recapping what we did last year and doing a traditional Game of the Year awards like I used to. You know, things are very different from how they used to be, quite frankly. And I did a couple weeks ago spend the time to do the disappointing games countdown, and it didn't really get much attention at all. In fact, that stream did poorly compared to my other gameplay streams. So I figured there must not be much desire for it. But here we are, a few weeks later, and people have been asking for it. And I said, all right, you know what? Here's the deal. We got a morning show now, where all I do is kind of hang out for like an hour. So instead of doing that for this, final morning show of the week, why don't we just do the Game of the Year awards, get it as part of this show? That way we could say I did it, right? No one can say, oh, Phil didn't do it for this year, and now it's an empty year where we don't know what his favorite games were, anything like that, all right? So we're going to do it together right here in the next hour or so. I'll count down the 8 games. I'll tell you why I felt they were the best games of the year. And then after that, it's time for DSP Builds It, where we're going to hang out for about 3+ hours building the Super Mario World Lego set. In fact, why not just get it right now? Most Tasteless is here. How y'all doing this morning? Y'all in a good mood, ready to chill with Phil today? This is a good stream to do this. It's the final streaming day of the week for me. I know that's weird, because typically my streaming weeks are much longer, but this is a shorter week, notably due to the fact that I have 2 days off starting tomorrow. Hold on one second.
Come here. Please, come here.
Oh my god,
Oh my god!
he tries to end it with you said nothing to actually...
My camera's probably up. My camera's out of position. What's been happening is a weird thing. My light somehow keeps touching my webcam. I don't know how. And the webcam keeps getting moved. So you see it's completely moved again? I don't know what's causing that. So I'm going to try to physically move the webcam forward a little bit. Oh my goodness. I know. It's such a serious thing, right? It's such a serious setup that I have now. We have to have everything absolutely perfect. For sure. I hate to say it, but if it's not apparent, if it's not apparent, all right, I think we can finally just come out and say it. The people who are in charge of gaming these days aren't gamers. Can we be honest? The people who are making the games, the people who are promoting the games, the people who cover games, they're not even gamers. What's happened is gaming has become such a huge, profitable industry, right? It is the biggest, most profitable industry on top of movies, music, art, anything. It makes more money than any entertainment industry. That now what happens is we've had the vultures come in. The people who are only in there to make money. That's the only reason they exist, is we want to make money. And they've taken over. They're running the game studios. They're in the boardrooms running the companies. They're the ones who are doing the marketing, the advertising. They're the ones who run all the game coverage events. They don't play games. So you got Jeff Keighley, who I think is well-intentioned, but he doesn't even know what's a good game. When you play a truly good game, okay, it feels like there's something there that has an existence and its own unique meaning. Like when you play BioShock for the first time, or you play Mass Effect for the first time. Hell, if you play Street Fighter for the first time, Super Mario, any version of Mario, right? When you play it, you're like, okay, I get it. I feel it. This is like a game that has its own, well, I guess you could call it a soul.
I did marry Bruce in July of last year. I wanted to show that my commitment to him was unconditional.
Because I really thought that by now people would have been like, okay, he's just not going to do it. But no, I still have people who are contacting me being like, so when's the Game of the Year Awards? When are you doing it? All right, I'll just do it. We'll do it so we can get out of the way so people can stop asking for it. Someone tipped $1 and change and says, would you consider your videos a form of art? Yeah. I mean, it might not be the most artistic form of art, and it might not be the most meaningful form of art, but yeah, my videos are considered art. Absolutely. All right, and so let's start my countdown for the best games of the year. For me, my personal takes, the first game is Pokemon Legends ZA. That worked a lot better, didn't it? So you might say, by the way, pay no attention to the man behind me. He's a fool, okay? You might say, why Pokemon Legends ZA? So many people criticized this game this year and said it's not as good as previous Pokemon games. The game itself is too small scope. It fails on a million levels, all right? There's a few reasons. Number one, if you treat this as less serious of a Pokemon game, because to be honest, it's not Pokemon Scarlet, it's not Pokemon Violet, it's not, you know, one of the mainline Pokemon games. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be kind of a filler game, okay? The game is actually quite fun, all right? If you take it as a game where you're going to hang out and chill and just enjoy what it is at face value, which, to be honest, I think this game improved upon things from the last couple of Pokemon games that were tons of issues. Number one, the graphical performance, right? The big number one complaint that everyone had about Pokemon Scarlet was that the game's graphics failed, right? They did. The game's graphics were choppy as heck and just weren't very good. It looked like crap on the Switch 1. So knowing the shortcomings of the Nintendo consoles, Game Freak decided to make this game completely confined to a city. Now, as many people who complained, well, that means that you can't have open world exploration and it's worse than other Pokemon games, it actually worked for this game. It made the game run well. The graphical performance was good. It never really dipped in frame rate. The Pokemon looked great. The character models looked great. So the graphical issue was fixed. It might have been one of the most bootleg ways it was fixed by having it all be in one city, but they did fix the issue. The fact that you could see so many Pokemon now in modern graphics, live action, rather than just turn-based stuff was really cool. And I actually liked the base mainline story of the game. The fact that instead of having gyms, you had these different trainers who you fought that all had different elements and different storylines. But then at the end, all the trainers actually united to save the city. That was pretty cool. It broke the mold of the traditional Pokemon storyline that, oh, you go around the world, you fight gym leaders and stuff like that. It didn't feel cliche in that regard, okay? So I actually enjoyed it for that. And let's be honest, it was a really chill, fun, interactive playthrough that I had with my viewers that ended up being insanely lengthy. People were having such a good time relaxing, playing Pokemon with me. It ended up being an over 60-hour endeavor where we went and did the DLC as well. Now, admittedly, the DLC was not that good. I actually think that the base game is much better than the DLC, okay? But I had a great time with this game. I did, all right? As much as people criticized it, which I agree with a lot of the criticisms, I'm not going to disagree with you and be like, oh, no, you're wrong. But I actually had a really good time with this game, and it ended up being one of my favorite playthroughs of the year. So it's at the bottom of the list, don't get me wrong, but it's still one of the better games that I played in 2025 and one of the ones that I got the most entertainment out of because of the level of interaction and chill fun that we had when we were actually playing it together. All right, maybe if I was playing this game by myself and I didn't have an interactive audience to help me to understand the different rankings, the different elements and the weaknesses and all of that, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much. All right, but the fact that it ended up being a really cool, chill, interactive playthrough with all of you, it ended up being really fun. So that's why it's at the bottom of the list. but it still makes the list of my favorite games of 2025. Okay? If anything, my one criticism of the game is very simple. As you can see, the combat is live action. The game actually thinks it's like an MMO, and it's not. I actually prefer the old turn-based combat of traditional Pokemon, while this one was way more action-based. And I feel like because it was action-based, it was hard to keep track of a lot of stuff. Like, I felt like elements, weaknesses, and certain abilities that normally would have been like, oh, damage over time or slow your enemy, they don't really matter because the game is moving so fast. All you're just trying to do is maximum damage as quickly as possible, and you don't really care about anything else. Other Pokemon games, because you have time to plan out your turns and stuff, you can actually have more of a strategy applied. Here, it's just like, just hit him as hard as you can like a truck and take him out. So, there you go, turkey. That's cute. So, Pokemon Legends ZA, bottom of my list, but it definitely was one of my favorite games of the year. Okay. Very nice. Already there's a big uproar in chat. Everyone's like, how dare you say that that game was good? The game was atrociously bad. You're absolutely wrong. And we are now going to crucify you. Well, thank you very much. I have the cross out on the lawn. I'm ready. I just need to get some nails and a hammer, and we're good. I did say that this was going to be a subjective list. I did say that you would probably not agree. You did hear me say that when we began, correct? Okay. Show you my closet? Oh, I will. I actually do an event every year now. It's going to be called DSP's Indivestance Day. We're going to do it on July 4th on Independence Day. Or if July 4th ends up being a weird day for some reason, maybe we'll do it like just around there. But I'm going to do a marathon. And during that marathon, two things happen. Number one, I'm going to actually clean out this closet, reorganize it, and throw a bunch of stuff out. And in fact, it needs to be done pretty badly because now when I did the renovations in this studio over the last couple of months, I've got all kinds of junk in there now, boxes and stuff that need to be cleaned out, stuff that needs to be thrown out. I have decorations I'm never going to use again because now my set is different. So I need to clean that out. That's number one. But the reason it's called Indivestance Day is because that is the one day a year when I'm going to bust out my storage bin of vests and hats. And for levels of support that I get during that marathon, I will put on a vest and a hat of your choice, just like I used to do back in the day. But we retired it like 2 years ago. We bring it back just for Indivestance Day. All right? One day a year, the vests and hats are back. So be there for Indivestance Day this coming July 4th. There you go. A nice little plug. Jade says, I loved Pokemon, but the DLC was just too long. The DLC was not well designed at all. The DLC for Pokemon Legends ZA was basically, you could tell it was an afterthought, and they just wanted a DLC but didn't want to put a lot of effort into it. So it's just too lengthy, too drawn out, waste your time, very boring. Okay, I received a $5.69 tip from Edge Steel. Thank you to Edge Steel. Let's get a nice animation for you. Our first major tip of the day where we can actually have an animation. Thank you, Edge Steel. They said, I've been a fan on and off since early YouTube days. I'm excited for today's list. Keep up your great content. Thank you so much, Edge Steel. Appreciate that. Let's get that on the leaderboard. Thank you, thank you. Okay, let's continue. Let's get to our next entry on the countdown. Ready? So our next entry on the countdown is a game that's actually a follow-up to a game that I had played several years ago on a whim. Someone had suggested it to me, and I had never heard of it. And I tried it, and I was surprisingly enough, I really, really liked it. Then I played the sequel this year, and to be honest, it was more of the same. So again, I really liked it. It's right up my alley. But it's lower on the list for a good reason, and you're going to understand why when we take a look at this game. Ladies and gentlemen, the game that's the next on my list of best games of 2025, or I should say my favorite games of 2025, is Tormented Souls 2. Now, let me fast forward here because it looks like I'm blabbing about a puzzle. Let's actually get to the game. Here we go. So Tormented Souls 2, for those who don't know, it's the follow-up to a game from a few years ago that essentially is trying to emulate survival horror games of yesteryear. And what I mean by that is fixed camera angles, limited inventory, limited resources, enemies that jump out of the corners of the screen that you can't see, boss fights that are tankish, okay? So, yeah, you know, all of those things. As you can see, does this not look reminiscent to, say, like the Spencer Mansion or something like that from a Resident Evil game? So it has elements from many different classic survival horrors, including Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and more from back in the day, okay? I really liked the graphics. I liked the lighting of the game. The story was pretty creepy as well. And I did like a lot of the gameplay elements, again, feeling like classic horror games from the past. If you like classic horror, survival horror, you're going to enjoy Tormented Souls 1 and 2. This one came out in the fall, so it was like the perfect prime time for a game like this to be out around Halloween-ish, okay? So, you know, that's all the good things about the game. So you might say, well, why is this so low on the list, at the bottom of your list of your favorite games if you really liked it? Well, it's very simple. The game is made by a small studio. This game is not made by a giant AAA company. They don't have a big budget, okay? When the game came out, I played it for around, I want to say I played it up to like almost 15 hours. And then all of a sudden, I ran into a horrendous game-breaking bug. There was a puzzle that, even though I solved it correctly, would not complete, and I couldn't play the game. The game actually had soft-locked itself, and I couldn't play it any further. I had to wait over a week for the game developers to patch the game, to fix it, and then I was able to continue on with my playthrough. Even then, there were more bugs that persisted. So I hate to say it, but that's kind of the sad fact about games that are smaller scale. They may be gems that outshine the bigger games, the AAA games. To be honest, this game was much better than many AAA games that I played in 2025. But because it's a small studio, because they don't have a good budget, you might find a whole bunch of bugs during the game that hinder your progress. And that's legit what happened with this one, is I had to stop playing it for a while and actually wait for them to fix the game so that I could advance. It just really sucked that you're really enjoying a game. You're in a groove. It's part of your schedule. You know, you're really enjoying it. Oh, now you're frozen. You can't play it for like a week and a half. So, you know, it is what it is. Eventually, they did fix the problems, and eventually I did beat the game, and I did like it a lot. Tormented Souls 2, again, strongly recommended for those who are fans of classic survival horror. I think that you'll really like the game. But understand that when you play a smaller scale game like this, your mileage may vary on your entertainment and your experience. You may sadly run into a bunch of problems. All right? There you go. Okay. Okay, let's skip this and go to the next one. All right. Continuing on, my countdown of my favorite games of 2025. I think this one may shock a lot of people. And I think this one maybe you're like, what? You're confused. But I'm going to explain. And once I explain, I think you're actually going to understand where I'm coming from with this one. Okay? My next game in my listing of the best games of 2025 is Death Stranding 2. Whoa, what the? Right? You may be like, what's going on? Death Stranding 2? Aren't you highly critical of this series? Don't you say that Death Stranding is just an overglorified delivery game and it's not that good? Why on earth would you say that Death Stranding 2 is one of the best games of 2025? Right? You're confused. You're utterly confused. And you want an explanation, and you deserve an explanation. I'm going to give you one. Once I figure out what's up with my camera, because I'm trying to block myself, I got to be like way over here to block myself. Really weird. Okay, so why Death Stranding 2? All right, let's talk about it. Number one, great graphics. You know, I played it on PS5 Pro because, you know, it's a PS5 game. And the game looked beautiful throughout. Still has best-in-class mocap, character models, great voice acting. The game is gorgeous and is well-designed and well-implemented, correct? No one can really disagree with that, I don't think, okay? The game itself actually dramatically improved upon many of the things from the previous game. One of the major complaints of Death Stranding 1 is that the game is so slow-paced and you have to be on foot for so much of it that the game feels like an arduous task. Well, in Death Stranding 2, you actually get to drive vehicles the vast majority of the game. They fixed that issue from the first game where you were like so bored because basically the entirety of the game was walking on foot. Not to say there's not a lot of walking on foot. There absolutely is. But at no point does it feel anywhere near as tedious as the first game. The game has more action. The game actually has some pretty epic boss fights. And honestly, I think the story is great too. Now, admittedly, The game is just the game where you're a delivery person. Although there are fights and there is story with action and all kinds of stuff going on, but akin to like an anime almost, okay? Basically, the reason that I am listing this as one of the best games of the year is pretty simple. It's very simple. Just think of it this way. 2025 was a year where most games sucked. All right? Most games that came out had hype, and it came from a studio you knew, and so you expected it to be good. And then you played the game, you're like, why is this game so mid or so shitty? It was the year of mid and shitty games. It really was, 100%. It was just a very disappointing year overall in general. So, held up to that comparison, Death Stranding 2 actually performed well, actually improved upon the first game, was entertaining, wasn't as boring as the first one. It did everything right. If there were better games in 2025, maybe I would have been like, it just wasn't that good. But in comparison to everything else, this legit was one of the best games of the year, hands down. Any other year, if there were all these other better games to compare it to, I would have been like, it's just okay. This year, this is by far one of the best games of the year. The year sucked. The year had so few really good games that this one stood out. It's weird because, again, I probably wouldn't have praised it this much in a previous year, but this is one of the gems of 2025. If you didn't play it, you actually missed out because everything else was terrible. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully you didn't pass it by thinking, oh, I played the first one or I heard the first one was insanely boring. This one is actually much better. All right? Yes, you can drive vehicles almost the entirety of the game. Yes, there's actually a lot of combat and stuff in it. They kind of fixed or improved upon those shortcomings of the first game, and it doesn't feel nearly as tedious and boring, and it looks great, and the story advances, and it's pretty darn good. Give it a look if you skipped it. I think you'll actually enjoy yourself. There you go. Okay. The next game on the countdown is a game that I almost didn't play. It absolutely was a game that got a huge amount of hype, okay, in 2025. It's a game that normally I would not have played at all. But I decided to change my philosophy on how I was going to cover stuff. I decided to listen to the audience and to venture out and try new stuff. And to be honest, I'm not disappointed whatsoever that I actually tried out this game, because in the long run, I think not only did I get exposure to an entire genre that I didn't understand, but I also had a lot of great gameplay time with an awesome interactive audience. The game that I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is Arc Raiders. Yes, Arc Raiders, I feel, was an experience that I almost missed out on. Okay, I didn't know what an extraction shooter even was. I had never played one before. So not understanding what the game was, I was going to skip it. And I did skip it for a while. Like, it was like a whole month or so it was out and I didn't play it. And then basically, people reached out to me and were like, why would you not play one of the better games of the year? And I explained, well, these multiplayer games, they're a dime a dozen. They're not really for me. I like more unique games and things like that, or games that have like a single player narrative. But you guys convinced me. Notably, again, I'd say it was after the Asmongold interview when I had a different viewer base who were kind of talking to me about stuff. And this game came up as a big suggestion. Like, dude, everyone else is playing it. Why on earth would you not try Arc Raiders? So I tried it, and once I started getting into it and its gameplay loop and the formula of what it was, I ended up really liking it. Now, I have stopped playing it since, because I played it for like over a month. It was almost 2 months that I was playing it, and I pretty much saw almost everything the game had to offer. And I think that is the limitation of one of these extraction shooters, is you're either going to get ultra serious about it, where you're going to take every objective like a new thing you absolutely must do. You're going to start teaming up with an established team of people you trust, and you voice communicate, and you go really serious into it as like a pack of players. Or else you play it casually for a while, and it gets burned out, and then you're like, all right, I'm not going to play it anymore, right? And kind of that's what happened to me, is I don't think I was ever going to get ultra serious about the game. I just wanted to see exactly what it was and see how much entertainment I could get out of it for my audience. So that's how I treated it, and it worked. It worked for about a month and a half, 2 months, right? We had some good times. We did the Cold Snap event together, right? We had some good times in the game. I'm happy that I played it, and to be honest, when future extraction shooters come out, and if you guys want me to try them or explore them, I probably will. I understand what the genre is meant to be now, and I could probably better relate to the games and or compare them to each other because I got my start here with Arc Raiders. Okay? So thanks to anyone who was along for the ride with Arc Raiders. I had a great time. It just got to its logical stopping point where it's like, all right, we've seen every map. We've fought every enemy. Unless I get so crazy ingrained in playing this all the time, which I'm not going to. I'm a variety streamer. It's never really going to continue to work, and that's why we stopped playing it. But, man, I had a great time, for sure, playing this game, and I want to say thank you to everyone who did suggest it. Honestly, when you really think about it, probably best multiplayer experience of 2025. It definitely was a better game than Call of Duty this year. I didn't really like Battlefield because Battlefield, of course, was all team-based, and I'm not really all about the teams. So I think this being a unique multiplayer experience where sometimes you want to team up with the other raiders and help each other to survive, but then other times someone might backstab you and steal your stuff. I thought that was completely unique. And yeah, I would definitely say this was my best multiplayer experience of 2025 by a long shot, actually. If you haven't played it yet, hey, if you're okay with a game that has a repetitive formula and you just want to drop into a game and have some good fun in an experience where it's all about survival and looting, you're going to like the game. It's probably right now best in class. I don't know, in a month or two, we've got that marathon game, and then we probably going to have more this year. But right now, it's probably the best one out there. I'd say give it a look. Arc Raiders is a thumbs up from me. Okay. No, the list sucks. All right, then we'll stop here. That's fine. All right, I'm listening to the feedback from Kick. We all know that the Kick chatters know what's best. They say, no, that this list sucks. So we're going to stop right now. That's it. Okay. All right. You just never know what my top 4 games of the year were then. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Sounds good to me. The list got better the last 2 games. Well, I'm glad that you said that, Scooty. I'm glad that you feel that way. But I have to listen to the viewers, and Kick says that the list sucks, so I'm going to stop doing it right now. Sorry. Cowboys on the Kick chat says, why do you have to be such an asshole? Well, let me answer a question with a question. Why do you have to be such a dickhead? You were the one who was a dickhead first. There you go. All right. I think we'll continue now. All right, let's continue. Ladies and gentlemen, the next game on the list, honestly for me, was a pleasant surprise hit. And the reason I say that, this was a game that I went into without any real expectation. I had no idea if this game would be good or not. And in fact, this game actually had unique, great timing. I'll explain in a moment, but I want to say thank you to Dark Ethan, who just did a Canadian $5 super chat. Let's see what the value of that is today. The Canadian dollar's been fluctuating a lot this week. That is $3.69. Thank you to Dark Ethan for that. All right, so this particular game had very unique release timing. And because of its release timing, I ended up checking it out. And it just so happens that this game ended up being better than the other game that was in the same category. All right, let me show you, and then I think you'll understand, and I'll give you the deets. The game that I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is Chronos: The New Dawn. That is right, a survival horror game that actually beat out Silent Hill F to the punch with its release window. This game came out, I believe it was the end of the summer, while Silent Hill F, I believe, came out in early September. This one came out late August. So because of that, I played it before the other big horror releases of the year. And to be quite honest, I loved it way more than Silent Hill F. Silent Hill F was on my most disappointing games of the year countdown. Chronos ends up being way up here on my favorite games of the year. Now, why? Well, number one, as you can see, the graphics are quite good. Number two, it had elements, again, that made it feel like a classic survival horror game. Notably, inventory management was a huge one, and monsters jumping out around corners was huge. This game, for the record, it's not for the faint of heart, and it is not easy. This game is actually very difficult in certain parts. There were parts where I almost soft-locked myself because I had used so much ammo up that I didn't know how I was going to get out of a situation. So I ended up in a situation like when I played Resident Evil 0 years ago, where I had to go through an entire area full of enemies without attacking any of them because I didn't have ammo to kill them. Okay, this game could very much end up like that. Now, this game is a unique combination of elements from games like Resident Evil 4, Dead Space, and that kind of game. So if you're looking for a very difficult, over-the-shoulder, third-person survival horror game with action elements, you're going to get it. That's the kind of game it is. Also, it has a very unique, futuristic sci-fi plot that involves time loops and time travel, and it's an ongoing mystery right until the end of the game. So you actually really have no idea what's going on in this game until you get to the end. And I'll be honest, I think that the plot was quite good. I would say the only thing that actually disappointed me about this game is that there are multiple endings, okay? But I don't particularly think that any of the endings are great. They're all passable endings, but the game is so hard that you would hope that when you get to the ending, there's like this epic finale. But honestly, I think all of the endings ended up being a little bit underwhelming. Like, I played the game once and I saw the standard ending. Then I went to YouTube and we watched like the other two endings to see them all, because there was no way I was going to replay the game from the start that many times. And honestly, I liked it, but I do feel like that if the ending was better, it would have even been a better game. But I loved the game's elements, and again, it was more about, I think, the journey than the destination, if that makes sense. Again, if you like classic survival horror, like Resident Evil 4-esque, not the old school stuff, but like Resident Evil 4, like levels of challenge, I think you're really going to like this game. And if you're into the whole like sci-fi, futuristic, like Dead Space style horror, you're also really going to like this game. So definitely up there. Again, as you notice, I'm a horror guy. I like horror games, and that's why games like Tormented Souls 2 and Chronos, these way lesser known, more indie style games, they stood out this year, while the big boys like Silent Hill F flopped, floundered, and were not very good at all. So really, 2025 was the year of like the smaller game dominating the gaming landscape, and Chronos The New Dawn is definitely a perfect example of that. There you go. Any of the games that we're about to talk about could literally be Game of the Year. All right? Any of them. All three of the games that I'm about to now reveal were all unique, best-in-class standouts. They all were from way smaller scale studios, and they all ended up being pretty long, epic playthroughs for me in 2025. All right? So let's just jump right into them, shall we? Let's go. The first game of the top 3 best games of the year for me is Blueprints. That's right, Blueprints, a game that I absolutely loved. Unique puzzle game. It's a roguelike, okay, but it's also almost like a dungeon crawler exploration. It's full of unique puzzles. It's got so much insane amount of content. Every time that you think that you're done or you're reaching the end and you're at the final puzzle and the final leg of the story, something else happens. A new thing opens. A new thing is revealed. And now you've got to try even harder to figure out what that mystery is, what that thing is, and to solve that one. The game is wild in the amount of content that it has. Okay? The premise of the game is you enter a mansion and all the rooms are randomly generated. You have to choose between certain rooms to draft on a blueprint to go to the next room. Each room has different elements and puzzles to solve inside. And there's so many different goals to the game. I can't even tell you, honestly, what the end game goal is, because I never got to it. And I played this game for over 60 plus hours, and I still didn't do all the puzzles. That's how much content this game actually has. The base premise is that eventually you're going to get to a secret room at the end of the mansion, get inside, and then the credits roll. But that's literally not the end of the game. There is ridiculous amounts of content past that to discover. There's a hidden conspiracy about a government and how you maybe should have been the person to actually be on the throne, but you got overthrown, and now there's a different government in place, and how many are family members with all this upheaval. It's wild. It's probably one of the craziest games that I've played in a long time, because when you play it, you never expect it to be as good as it is. And every single time that I played it, I got completely immersed in it. Seriously. In fact, I really only have one complaint about Blueprints. All right? And it's very simple. Because of the nature of the game being RNG, meaning there's certain things that you don't control, the game will just throw random, rooms at you or whatever. There are situations where, sadly, you just can't win. You may have a run, a day in the mansion where you just can't get anything done. And it's not your fault. That's just what the game decided. At the end of the game, like I said, past the credits, there's tough puzzles. And some of the puzzles are like, so you can only do something on a certain day of the week, at a certain time on the clock, if a certain criteria is met, and there's just no way to have all those things align. You have to keep trying and retrying and retrying and retrying days until it finally works. And that can be frustrating. To have a game that's not completely within your control can end up being incredibly frustrating. Shout out to Most Tasteless down there at the bottom of the screen who had done a super chat during the playthrough. See that? There you go. So anyway, I loved it. To be honest, I probably would have kept going if the puzzles hadn't gotten so time consuming. Like I said, there was one day I did a stream of it, and for 2 hours we were trying to complete one puzzle, and we couldn't because it's all RNG and you're trying to get the stuff to align, and you can't. So that's not entertaining for a streaming audience, you know? Maybe if you're someone who's just playing it for yourself offline, you could do it. But for me, I'm trying to stream and entertain people. It's like people don't just want to sit around and watch me try to do the same puzzle for 3 hours and fail because the game won't align all the criteria properly, right? But this game is incredibly unique, and I'm so happy that I had played it. Because, again, 2025 was a year where I tried to do things a lot differently and branch out and play different games. And some of these games that I played were just so different and exposed me to entire genres. Like, I never thought there would be a puzzle roguelike. Didn't even know that it could exist. And now I play, I'm like, wow. Something finally really unique, too. And that's the thing. In a year where most games were just expansions, sequels, and things that were kind of just drawing upon previous formulas, Blueprints strove to do something completely different and succeeded. That's why I think it's a great game. Okay. In reality, the top 2 games of the year, I just want you to understand, I'm going to reveal them, but they're not in order. Okay? These top 3 games, actually, any one of these top 3 games could be game of the year for me. Okay? I'm going to make that clear. I'm revealing the games basically in order of playing, because Blueprints I played first. Well, you'll see what I mean. Okay, ready? Up next. You might say, well, why am I continuing? Well, I don't listen to Kick Chat. That's why I'm continuing. Up next, this next game, all right, is a game that honestly I didn't think was going to work. And the reason being, I have tried this genre of game in my content before, time and time again, and it almost never worked. Whenever I tried to play one of these style of games, they would flop, and the audience would say, we're incredibly bored, we don't want you to play it anymore, and I would have to move on. And that was very disappointing to me, because this is a genre that I think is actually one of the most interesting, and it has ties to retro classic vibes, and it's a genre that has outstanding content in it, and I never really got to enjoy it. Until 2025. Because when this game came out, a lot of people were hyping it and said, Phil, will you check it out? And I said, well, if you guys are going to be there for it, surprisingly enough, they were. People were here. They engaged. They supported. They had an absolute great time with this playthrough. The game that I'm talking about is Hollow Knight Silksong. So, Hollow Knight Silksong is the follow-up to 2017's Hollow Knight. It is the direct sequel. Well, now you play as the character Hornet, who is actually one of the antagonists in Hollow Knight. The game itself is, in my opinion, the best Metroidvania-style game ever created. It has an incredibly unique design. All these different environments that have different kinds of, environmental location stuff like climates, enemy types, world design. Has a ridiculous amount of gameplay elements. The more you play, the more you unlock. The more you unlock, the better and more fun the game becomes because you get more combat abilities, more maneuverability. Much like an old-style Zelda or Metroid game, you'll see things at the beginning of the game that you just can't figure out, and then later on in the game, you'll get the means to do them, and you're like, Eureka! You'll go back, and you'll be able to explore areas that you skipped, which is always super fun. Tons and tons of epic boss fights in this game. Completely unique elements of things that I've never even seen before in a video game. Seriously, I mean that. Like, the game was very unique. It stood out huge for me, and I just absolutely loved it. In fact, the only complaint I have is that the game is so difficult that when you get to the end, some of the platforming and bosses require such insanely, critical timing. I got a callus on my thumb playing it. I actually got a callus right here in the center of my thumb from playing this game on the Xbox Elite 2 controller. It prompted me to go out and buy a completely different controller to play other games on because I didn't want to get a callus again if I played other games. So, yeah, it was great. Absolutely super fun. I'm so happy that people convinced me to play it. I'm so happy that I gave it all the time that I did, because it was I want to say it was like an over 50-hour playthrough. I'm not 100% sure, but I did all the content. I beat the main game, but then there's a whole third secret act if you do certain criteria. And the third act is literally like ties it to the first game and gives it so much more gameplay and so many awesome boss fights and elements that you would have skipped out if you didn't play the third act. I am so ultimately happy that I played this game and gave it the time that I did. It was an absolutely great romp. And now, for those who don't know, I'm actually playing Hollow Knight 1 right now. We're going to continue that playthrough starting on Saturday, and it's going to be a main game in my rotation that I'm going to be playing, and I'm very excited for the future of that playthrough. You know, it's going to be a great one. So, thanks to those who suggested it, championed it, kept convincing me to play it, and thanks to those who were there during the playthrough to engage and support with it to make it viable. And now, hopefully, we'll do the same thing with the original game in 2026, which will be absolutely amazing, right? Sweet. Okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, number one, and we all knew that this game was going to be on the list, so I don't think that anyone's going to freak out. Let's just jump into it, and I'll start to explain. Number one in the list, not to say this is the best game of the year, but it's just number one in my countdown, just for arbitrary order here, is, of course, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Now, everyone knew that this game was going to be on the list. No one, I think, is going to say, oh, I'm so shocked that Expedition 33 is on the list, right? So, what does Expedition 33 do well? Well, let's see. The graphics, the world design, the characters and their unique stories, the voice acting, the gameplay elements, the music and soundtrack. Hold on. I'm not done. The advancement of combat in turn-based RPGs, the incredible amount of content in the game, and its awesome Act 3, which literally doubles the length of the game. It's just, hands down, it's one of the best RPGs ever made. Arguably the best RPG that I've played in about 10 years. No lie. I like the fact that it is traditional turn-based, but adds action elements with the parrying and dodging that allow it to be more attention-demanding, as opposed to previous turn-based games where it's like you could just like let it sit there and you don't have to pay attention. In this game, you have to be always actively parrying and doing things, right? And, it advanced upon a formula that already was popular, which is the turn-based combat with the timed button inputs, such as like Super Mario RPG and a few others that have done it well. But it has unique elements too. Things like how each character plays completely differently. In some RPGs, characters are just empty blank palettes, and then all you do is you build on them with abilities over the course of the game. In this case, every character in Clair Obscur plays completely differently from the ground up. None of them are even similar. They're building upon each other's builds, and those builds can advance over the course of the game. That's another cool thing, is that at the beginning of the game, you may play a character one way, but by the end of the game, you might completely unlock new abilities in their build, and now you want to play them a different way. For example, there's a fencer named Mael. She starts off at the beginning of the game just using standard attacks. Then all of a sudden, she gets this build that uses fire. So she wants to get burn stacking on the enemy for damage over time. But then by the end of the game, she has a way to go into these really unique stances that deal like double and triple damage, but it makes her weaker physically, but she deals more damage. So it's kind of a trade-off. And so it gets better and better. The further into the game you go, the more abilities you unlock, the more unique the game is. I really love it. Now, also the thing is, at the end of the game, once you've beaten the story, there's still another 20 to 30 hours to go. There's all this content for people who really love the game to sink their teeth into. So you could just play it at face value, and much like Silksong, you could just finish the first two acts and never play the third act that has all the back-end content and still get the full story and enjoy it. But if you further play, you're going to get even more enjoyment out of the game for a base value. You don't have to pay any extra money for it. It's just in there. So, did you notice something that I just mentioned about the last 3 games that I all feel are Game of the Year contender? Every single one of them had a base game that you could beat in around 20 to 30 hours, and the credits roll. But then, there's post-game content for those who are super fans of the games to really sink their teeth into for no additional charge. The top 3 games of 2025 all were actually giving maximum value to the people who bought them. They didn't nickel and dime you with DLCs. They didn't make you wait for more content, pay for more content. You just got it because you already bought the game and you were a fan. That is truly the spirit of a good game that's designed by a group of game developers that care about what they're doing, as opposed to a game that comes out and immediately within a month to a few months, there's the next season, drop more money into skins, into seasonal content, into unlocks. Those are games manufactured to make profits, okay? These games, the top 3 of the year, are games that were designed to be works of art. Games that were designed to knock you on your butt and make your jaw drop and say, wow, best in class. Because in reality, the top 3 games of the year that I just described were best in class. Let's actually examine that statement, okay? Okay, so that's it. There is no game of the year because all 3 of those games are game of the year in their respective genres. So if you like puzzle games, then Blueprints is game of the year. If you like more retro-style Metroidvania games, then Silksong is your game of the year. And if you like turn-based RPGs, then definitely Expedition 33 is your game of the year. You also have the ability to say, well, I don't really like any of those genres, in which case you probably found another game that was also, maybe Arc Raiders is your game of the year. And that's okay too, because the 2025 was a year, there is no definitive winner because all the games that were good were actually doing exactly the same thing, just in different genres. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay.